Very often when I talk about voice and the Edinburgh Fringe, other performers say to me, I have lost my voice during the Fringe, or I lost my voice last year, or I lose my voice, or my voice gets tired. This is really, really common, worryingly common, but also, why? Why does it happen? Why do we lose our voice in big, intense environments if you're a performer, such as the Edinburgh Fringe? So in this video, I'm going to be looking at some of the research into voice, specifically in these kind of high-intensity, long performance situations like the Edinburgh Fringe, where you're performing every day for a month or for 3 weeks. I'm Alex, hello, I'm a voice coach, and I do, amongst other things on this channel, evidence-based vocal information and help for loads of different types of people, but a lot of the time for performers. And I'm also a Edinburgh Fringe performer for almost a decade, and I've been going as a punter, as a person in the audience, since I was about 17 years old, so about 20 years. So I'm very familiar with the Edinburgh Fringe, and yet people lose their voice all the time. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what is the Edinburgh Fringe in terms of voice? Why is it so difficult as an environment? I'm going to introduce 3 research papers that I've been looking at, specifically looking at street performing, which is perhaps one of the hardest, most intense types of performance you can do at the Fringe, in terms of the voice at least. We're going to look at what are the symptoms, what would you find in your voice if your voice is getting sore or tired, what is actually happening in your voice in those situations, and what can you do to make sure that you don't lose your voice this year if you're performing at the Edinburgh Fringe or any other type of festival. So, what is the Edinburgh Fringe in terms of the voice? Now, if you don't know, it is the Fringe is the biggest arts or performing arts festival in the world. So thousands and thousands of performers from all over the world come to the city of Edinburgh to perform in venues of varying types, sizes and qualities. Some of them very, very tiny and very warm, and some of them huge, and also in the street. And it is just a very intense environment as a performer, and also vocally. So there's a type of stress that I quite like as an ADHD person within the Edinburgh Fringe, which is that you just never stop. So you're going to shows when you're not performing shows, you're going to see shows when you're not seeing shows, you're out in the street, you're talking to people, you're trying to give them flyers so that they can come to your show, which vocally means that a lot of the time you're using your voice, and it's not just the hour, for example, if you've got an hour-long show. It's an intense thing, and perhaps even the biggest stressor in that is not the performance. It is things like flyering and networking in bars, or talking to socialising in bars of people when there's a lot of noise. It's an intense environment. So in this video we're going to look at 3 different papers, or we're going to draw from papers. I'm not going to go deep into them, that I've specifically been looking at in terms of street performing, and how that and how that impacts the voice. Well said there, Alex. Firstly, we're going to look at this paper, which is a Brazilian study into street performers and the voice. It's one of the few studies I've found that specifically looks at street performing and the voice. We've got this study, which is about tour guides in Turkey, and it talks a lot about the symptoms that can come up in the voice in these kind of extreme environments. And then we've got this study, which actually is a laryngoscopic study, so they put a scope down into people's larynxes, and specifically looked at actors, singers, and street performers, and looked at the differences of those. So, let's have a look. Let's dive in. What does the research say about these environments? Why is something like the Edinburgh Fringe such a difficult environment? I'm going to have a look here in this. So one of the things that came up from the street performer research was that there are kind of adverse conditions for the voice. So when you're in a small theatre or something, people can hear you. If you've got a microphone, you're as a comedian, you might have some sort of help with the voice, although many comedians lose their voice. But when you're out in the street, when you're performing, there are things like temperature changes. These are not great for the voice. Your vocal mechanism is moving from one hot environment into a cold environment into a hot environment. This happens in Edinburgh all the time. And even if it's a nice day outside, you can be sitting in a cold cellar in the middle of watching someone else's show or in your show, or it could be like a sauna in your venue, and then you go outside and it's freezing and there's lots of wind. So this is terrible for the voice. Your body is always trying to catch up. There's also things like acoustics, the sound's not great in some venues in Edinburgh. It's very difficult in the street. There's lots of background noise, people are talking, so this is really intense environment. There's also other things that affect things like not having a day off. So during the Edinburgh Fringe, it's quite common for performers to have either no days off or only one day off over the course of 3 weeks. I personally like to take 1 day off a week when I'm doing a show. I'm not doing a show this year. I'm only focusing on supporting people with their voice. But when I do have a show, I take a day off every week. But even then, it's not enough because you never get a day off, really. And this is something that the voice needs rest. And one of the biggest things that we kind of prescribe for a voice that is in danger or is sore is vocal rest. And during the Edinburgh Fringe, it's really hard to do that because you've got at least to perform every day. But really, if you're not giving out flyers, you're not talking to people, people are not coming into your show. So your voice is like under that pressure to not rest. So by the end of the run, it's very common to lose your voice. There are other things that affect the voice. And one of the biggest things that will affect the voice in terms of environment is just other noise around. So you know, if you're in a street performance and there's a bagpiper halfway up the street, which is pretty normal, you can't just tell the bagpiper to be quiet. They're there, that's their spot. So you have to speak loudly in order to be able to raise above this background noise, and that's pretty hard on the voice. And if you're not using the right methods to efficiently speak loudly, of which there are methods, then very quickly you're putting your voice into a high level of stress. What are the symptoms? Let's have a look. If you're in the middle of the Fringe, maybe when you're watching the video or you're thinking about the Edinburgh Fringe in the future, what can you start to notice to recognise that your voice is tired? Number one, this came out in in the tour guide research as the biggest thing, was hoarseness. So hoarseness is that it's just a kind of crackliness. It sounds and it feels a little bit hard to speak. You can notice it quite quickly. You can probably notice it before other people can hear it if you're attuned to your voice. This is very, very common. Another thing is dryness of the throat. So feeling dry in your throat, feeling tight in your throat, in your vocal mechanism. A difficulty speaking loudly. And so this is something if you're in the street or you're singing or you've got a performance where you have to use your voice loudly, you're going to start to notice, I can't hit these parts that I hit before in this performance. And that'll, like, those louder areas are where you'll notice first. And another thing you can notice if your voice is tired and it is damaged is that you will suddenly lose your voice. And I know plenty of performers who have experienced this. They've woken up one day and they're like, I can't speak. And they have to pull shows. This is the unfortunate thing. You have to go to your show. And if you can't perform without your voice, which many shows can't, then you have to pull your show. And that is a real shame because people have spent thousands of pounds to go bring a show to the Edinburgh Fringe, an entire month of their life, months and months and months of rehearsal, and then you have to start pulling shows because your voice is not working. And the research showed 2 big risk factors for these. So there were a bunch of risk factors, but there were 2 that were statistically significant and came out above all of them. One of them was speaking loudly. So this is hard. If you have to speak loudly to perform, speaking loudly is the biggest risk factor. And as a voice coach, this is something that, teaching people to speak loudly in an efficient and healthy way is pretty important for me. So speaking loudly was the first risk factor. What was the second? It was speaking when your voice is already damaged. And this is something that I think is a great contributor, a huge contributor. It's not great, it's terrible. But a huge contributor to people losing their voice during the Edinburgh Fringe is people who already recognise their voice is sore, but need to go out on stage. The adrenaline of getting on stage kind of makes you forget a little bit and you push a bit further. And this is something that very, very quickly, and I've lost my voice during the Fringe before, but I'm a voice coach, so I knew what to do. But I shouldn't have got there. Since then, I have never lost it, touching wood. But when your voice is already sore and you keep pushing, that is the time when these sort of things are going to happen. So if you do start to feel these symptoms of your voice, losing your voice, what's actually happening? Within the research studies, there were 4 things that they listed as most common when in these damaged voices from street performers and other performers. One was a vocal fold edema. So this means a swelling of the outer surface of the vocal folds. And when you feel that it means that they can't vibrate properly. Personally, I feel it as like a squashy feeling of the voice. Sometimes it can sound raspy and hoarse. Some people quite like the sound. They say it sounds sexy. Don't fall into that trap, especially if you're speaking loudly, because what's happening is you've basically kind of a bit like bruised your vocal folds, and then you're smashing them together at high volumes, high frequency, and this is just going to get worse and worse. So vocal fold edema, very much something that happens. Another one was a decreased vibration. So, as I say, your vocal folds, when they're operating efficiently, they vibrate in a very kind of gentle way. And when they're unhappy, in various different ways, this vibration reduces, which means in order to be able to get a louder sound, people have to push more, which is that's why working with your voice when it's already broken is an issue, because the vibrations are decreasing, and yet people are pushing more air over those vocal folds, and they're crashing together even more to compensate for the fact that they don't want to be doing that. The third is decreased mucosal wave. This is just a way of saying that the particular vibrations of the vocal folds. So the vocal folds don't go together like this; they go together like this in this nice, like undulating fashion. So that reduces as well, similar to what I'm talking about with decreased vibration. And finally, high vascularity. This just means there's blood vessels right there on the surface, and you can see them. They shouldn't be there. Usually your vocal folds look nice and white when they are healthy, but if you have a look at them and they are like red and there's a lot of blood vessels there, that means that, like, if you keep pushing them, there's a possibility that you could like start bleeding in your vocal folds. This is not good. But these are the sort of things that are happening at that level, because we can't see those. You know, if you cut your arm or something, then you can see it, but you can't see it in the vocal folds. All this together means that you've got these like swollen, inflamed vocal folds, and people are just kind of pushing through for 3 weeks in the Fringe, which is why people lose their voice. So what can you do about it? Say it's the Edinburgh Fringe, you find yourself in the middle of it, you've lost your voice, or you're starting to feel these symptoms, you understand a bit what's going on in your vocal folds. What can you do? Now, the first thing is to make sure that you get the right type of advice and support. This is something that I'm focusing on during the Fringe, of making sure that people have voice support, because there is a lot of stuff online. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. But when you're in the middle of the Fringe, you have not got time to go through a million YouTube videos to try and find what is the right thing to do with your voice. I would also say, if you're in those situations and you're feeling these, you're starting to lose your voice, go into vocal first aid mode. So I have some videos, or I will have some videos around the time of the Fringe, in order to be able to do that. One big one is hydration. So make sure that you are hydrated. There's a lot of research into vocal fold hydration. I can go into that in the future, but all you need to know is that being in the Edinburgh Fringe is an environment where you will quite easily become dehydrated. I have, on various occasions, realised that I've become dehydrated, and I've noticed on my voice first, and then realised that was the point. So you're drinking alcohol, you're moving around, the environments are weird, it's hot, sometimes it's too cold, sometimes it's very easy to forget to drink. So drink water. One of my tips personally is to bring a bottle of water, get it filled up, and have a little bottle of squash. You can get like tiny squash bottles. So you can get a bar to fill up your bottle of water, put some squash in it, and then drink it. For me, that has helped me, and I'm just continually drinking water. I don't drink alcohol most of the time during the Edinburgh Fringe anymore, because that also dries you out. Think about hydration. This is very, very a big one. But also have a routine, a voice routine. Do warm-ups. This is something I'm going to provide in the Fringe as well. Like, do daily warm-ups. Make sure that if nothing else, a warm-up allows you to take a moment to check in with your voice and see how it is. It's not necessarily about pushing it or getting it to a state. It can be, but one of the most important things about a warm-up is it means that you tune into your voice and go, what do I actually need vocally today? Because it's an intense. You are a vocal athlete when you're going through the Edinburgh Fringe. So those are that's just two of various different things that you can do if you start to lose your voice during the Fringe. But if you have questions about this sort of thing, please put it in the comments. Please ask about voice. That is my goal this year. If you like voice videos, then subscribe to the channel and you will be able to follow that. I'll be putting more things about research and voice during performing environments like the Fringe. For the moment, that is all. Please take care of your voice and make sure that this year you do not lose your voice and that it operates at full efficiency during the Fringe, if you are performing there this year. And if you are, let me know, and we can meet up.